Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Back into the video from Annie News. Now, I thought before we get too deep into cut content videos, we checked out episode 1's cut content. We would check out the how strong is Sung Jin Woo, going into season 2. And I'm not going to bother with the recap video now. I don't think it's necessary. I mean, if you guys want to see it, let me know. But I figured we'd do this, and then we'll just keep going with cut content videos as they come out. So let's find out how strong Sung Jin Woo is.
As strong as Sung Jin Woo becomes all throughout solo leveling, none of it would have been possible if not for the system.
Well, yeah, of course.
This is the very tool enabling his leveling, and it's the sole reason his body is even able to handle these powers. What serves as the foundation for all that, though, is the 5 core attributes Sung currently focuses on improving. The key stats defining his power, all of which enhance him exponentially the more he levels them. So, if we're going to understand how strong Sung Jin Woo is, we first need to understand what these attributes do for him. Strength increases all his physical stats, and that in turn translates to hitting harder and moving faster. Agility then allows him to see faster, and that in turn translates to an improved reaction time. Sung likes to describe it as time itself slowing down for him, but in actuality it's him just perceiving things faster.
That's actually kind of cool, getting the perspective of it. Like, so if someone else to see him, it'd be like, whoa, but then he's just like, no, everything seems quite chill.
So the more he enhances it, the slower things start to
appear to him. Cool. Right.
Next is vitality, and that increases both HP and stamina. 2 essential elements that make him tankier and less likely to hit the fatigue limit. Intelligence then only increases his mana, serving as the fuel allowing him to revive his soldiers infinitely. Lastly, he has perception, and this is what Sung describes as crucial information being transmitted in the form of sensation and feeling.
Okay.
He can sense auras and perceive the very flow of mana, allowing him to literally see just how strong someone was.
Pretty cool.
So, now that you know what these attributes do, we can start from the beginning when all of them were simply at 10. Sung had just been...
Right, so I like this. We're going to actually see how he became level... Right, season 2, cool.
Entered into the system, and the penalty quest resulted in him gaining his first passive and active skills.
Tenacity and dash.
Skills are the abilities he picks up from experience and runestones, which, just like himself, he can level up as well. They unfortunately max out at a level of 3, but it's after that they can be upgraded to their ultimate versions. So long as Sung continues to become more proficient with them, he can eventually upgrade them into the most refined and effective versions of themselves.
Right, so is it like, it's like, okay, got that, here's the extra stuff to upgrade it, then another 3 levels kind of thing? Or however many.
For now, he just has tenacity and dash, but both over time become more and more powerful. So, tenacity is a passive that halves damage whenever his health drops below 30%, and there's been a couple of times where we've seen it save him from those really tough boss fights. Dash enhances movement speed by 30%, and this too would be a nice bit of utility we see him get quite a bit of use out of. Whether it be evading enemies or closing the gap between them, there was no downside for being able to do things faster.
So cool.
Fast forward now to the dungeon in the subway, and this brings us to Sung's very first level up. He would equip Kim's sword, which enhanced his attacks, then use it to kill Lycans until there were no Lycans left. 20 plus of them would bring him to level 7, and the reward for that was a title calling him Wolf Slayer.
Wolf Slayer, I
As
love
a buff
that.
that only applied when the title was equipped, it increased all his stats by 40% when fighting against beast-type monsters. Now, 8 more levels would be gained while farming the 2 main floors of the subway dungeon, and another 2 after killing Kasaka on the 3rd.
Jesus.
This brings him to level 17, which is also the point
Says
where he
18
gets
now,
his
but-
first real weapon. Kasaka's Fang, which not only increases his attack damage, but can also apply the status effects of Bleed and Paralysis. Bleed decreases the target's health 1% a second, while Paralysis renders a
1% a second, so 100 seconds if they're on full health, and damn.
unable to move for a bit. Both were effects we saw put to very good use against Huang's group.
Definitely.
1 more level would be gained after killing the golem from the dungeon break, and 3 more gained after defeating the C-rank spider boss. This brought him to level 21, then the emergency quest after rewarded him with the brand new skill Bloodlust.
Right, yeah, where he had to kill the... Right, okay, damn, yeah, okay, cool.
Bloodlust imbues the effect of fear onto a target or multiple targets, decreasing the stats of those afflicted by 50%. It only lasts for a minute, but for the intense aura it emanates, that's usually enough for Sung to get whatever he wants out of it. Now, it's a bit after this that Sung would ingest Kasuka's poison, and that would grant him quite a bit of physical damage reduction. This was only possible due to Kandiaru's blessing though, which was a permanent passive making him immune to all poisons, diseases, and debuffs. The tower dungeon brings us to Sung's fight with Cerberus, a grueling battle.
Which, weirdly, and when I went to screen the recap thing that was edited together, and then the first 2 episodes of season 2, this whole Cerberus thing was not mentioned in the recap whatsoever, and the whole thing with his mum was not mentioned whatsoever. It was just so weird. It was like one random shot of her in the hospital, and that was it.
Battle which in the end would reward him with 4 more levels and his first equip item. The item was the Gatekeeper's Necklace, and this improved both agility and perception. This unfortunately had to be worn in order for the bonus to take effect, but it did disappear once it was on. So luckily that made wearing such outlandish gear a whole lot easier. Another level would be gained after killing the Hobgoblin boss from the Kang dungeon, then another one after that for hunting down all its underlings.
Yo.
It was immediately after having defeated Kang, though, that the reward for that was a runestone bearing the stealth skill. This was the hidden skill which made Sung's fight with Kang much harder than it should have been.
Yeah.
In fact, had it not been for Sung's perception which enabled him to track Kang's every movements, Sung knew he would have been killed by Kang for sure. Luckily,
He was a sneaky little bastard.
Sung didn't even need his eyes, since at this point in the story, his perception was high enough to know exactly where Kang was without even looking at him. It was another use for the stat aside from knowing whether or not to fight someone, the primary reason he'd been putting any points into it at all. So, by making this stealth skill his own now, Sung too could cloak his body and hide every single trace of it. He could easily approach enemies without being seen at all. Now, with Sung being level 27, this would be the point where he would start doing the 19C rank raids with Jinho.
Right.
The first day had granted him 1 level, 2 new skills, and a skill upgrade, then the second another 3 levels since the new skills were so incredibly useful. You see, Dash had improved to level 2, and that alone increased its buff from 30% to 40%. It was a huge jump that went to make Sung even faster now. The passive skill was called Advanced Dagger Technique, and this was earned after having fought with a dagger for so long. It was a reward for his ever-increasing proficiency with it, and as such provided 33% increased damage whenever he was using one. This also came with the brand new active skill Critical Attack, and this simply made it easier for Sung to target his opponent's vitals. It provided the most optimum way to attack with his daggers, and as such would guide him to the weak spot most lethal to them, after which additional damage would be applied if the weak spot was hit. That may sound standard given our own perception of critical attacks in video games, but for Sung this was a lot bigger than any of us may have considered. What I mean is that, for him who'd just been mindlessly slashing in hopes of landing a hit, a clear path to maximum damage was literally game-changing. Before he'd only ever achieved it a couple of times, but it's when he did that he knew the fight was over. Like, with Kang in this dungeon or the monsters here, Sung knew the moment his dagger made impact the fight was finished. There was this satisfying feeling which made him certain of it. So, to be able to achieve that feeling with every attack, well, that was kind of like finding water in the desert. It had turned Sung into a monster-killing machine, essentially buffing his efficiency to the point that it was practically tripled now. By the 4th day, Sung and Jinho would have completed 9 C rank gates, and it was at this point that Sung was level 39 now.
Thing is, weird, you give all these numbers, but it doesn't really... It's bizarre to me when you actually think about it. Like, you can throw any number on him, and it doesn't really correlate to anything with any other hunter. Like, I'd love a side-by-side of what the levels mean in comparison to ranks within the actual, like, world of solo leveling, if you know what I mean. Because he's, like, the only person that has these levels. Still cool, though.
One more would be gained while in a dungeon fighting against lizardmen, and this would unlock access into the class change dungeon. An area where 2 more levels would be gained while fighting assassins and knights, then 3 more across the span of 6 hours while getting to Igris. The knights he killed dropped some of the best equipment he'd come across yet, and the end result was a Sung who was pretty kitted now.
Kitted
Unfortunately,
up.
the gloves, ring, and shoes didn't specify what they did, but the breastplate and gauntlets both added another 10% physical damage reduction together.
Cool.
It also helped that the gauntlets prevented any injuries to the wearer's hands. An additional
That is really freaking cool.
effect that would come in handy when fighting Igris. Once
Ah, so explain. Right, okay, cool.
again, these armor pieces didn't actually hinder him, since the instant they were equipped, they would vanish as if not even there anymore. They did encumber him if a stat wasn't above a certain level, but that was a growth issue Sung never had to worry about. 2 more levels would be gained after defeating Igris, then another 4 while farming centipedes during the penalty quest. This had also brought critical attack to level 2, and that in turn increased the damage done when a weak spot was hit. More importantly than all that, though, was the first S-rank item Sung had earned as a drop from Igris. It didn't have an effect that made it anything
That looks so freaking cool. That's boss.
particularly special, but the stats it gave were by far the best out of any of his equipment. I mean, the 15% physical damage reduction alone made it top tier already, then those additional 40 stat points just made it better. It was as if the Gatekeeper's necklace and Kasuka's poison were combined into one. So, with that bringing his stats to this, Sung was ecstatic from all the massive boosts he'd just received. In fact, it was actually a core part of making the centipede farming that much easier for him. The gold he got from that was then used to purchase Night Killer, and this would be the dagger Sung would stick with until the Red Gate. It was much stronger than Kasuka's since it tripled the damage it did, and it also came with the effect of doing 25% more damage to heavily armored opponents. Sung did consider using both daggers, but to him he felt that would be way too cumbersome. Like, if he wanted to retain mobility and remain flexible in combat, then Sung knew he needed to keep his left hand open. Now, it was shortly after that Sung would finally activate the runestone he got from Igris. A new active skill called Ruler's Touch, which at its core allowed him to physically manipulate objects without ever touching them. It was pretty much telekinesis, and the extent to which it worked depended of course on how proficient he was with it. So, right now if he wanted to move something a whole lot bigger than him, he wouldn't be able to since he wasn't skilled enough yet.
Right.
That'll definitely
Oh, so we can... so potentially in future he... Wow.
change over time, but until he uses it more, that's currently what he's limited to. Going back to the class change dungeon now, after killing a mage by throwing his dagger, Sung had earned himself another active skill called Dagger Throw.
Cool.
This increased his
Dagger Toss, level 1.
damage whenever a dagger was thrown and would become more accurate the more proficient he was with it. A neat synergy he found with his Ruler's Touch skill was that by applying it to his dagger whenever it was thrown, he could increase its momentum and make it do even more damage. So, that was all directly on the path to becoming a necromancer, and as we know, that was simply a means to promote him to Shadow Monarch. An upgrade that would unlock 2 skills, a title, and a whole bunch of bonus stats. His new title gave him a 1% stat increase for every 1% health he was missing, and he would keep it equipped unless he knew he was going up against beast-type monsters. His skills were all related to his class, and they were the abilities to create shadow soldiers and store them. Shadow Extraction creates soldiers by extracting mana from a recently deceased target, while Shadow Storage allowed them to be stored within his shadow. They could then be summoned freely at 0 cost to him, then absorbed back whenever he wanted. The number he could store was always less than the number he could extract, but if there was ever a time when a battlefield was riddled with targets for Shadow Extraction, those extra numbers would certainly make a difference. Even if they were only going to be present for that battle.
That fight, right, okay, yeah.
The extras would all be returned to the Void once the battle was finished, since their existence was, after all, only possible when in the vicinity of him. But anyway, with Sung being at level 51 now, it's hard to say whether he's individually as strong as an S rank, but when you add all the powers and shadow soldiers which fight alongside him, his overall rank would definitely be up there.
Right, okay.
This is the level he's at the end of Season 1, meaning in Season 2, he's already most likely one of the strongest hunters in the entire country. That's just how strong Sung Jin Woo is so far.
Nice.
His current power level going into Season 2. But yeah, that's a quick spoiler-free overview of Sung's power.
Love that.
If you want to see the full video covering the rest of it, then you can watch that over here. My next video will be the episodic cut content, so if you want to know how the anime differs from the manhwa and novel, be sure to subscribe because that'll be coming out soon. Until then though, as always, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this type of anime content, then you already know what to do.
So,
until
till
next
next
time.
time. Ciao. So yeah, we've already checked out the cut content, but I just thought it'd be fun to just like actually get that and like we gauge how strong he is, where he got his powers. It's basically like a recap of not the story itself, but how he has become as strong as he is. I am hoping that the episode 2 of season 2 content is going to be soon as well, so we'll check that out. There's other stuff. I've got Seth programming videos. I've got 6 videos. I've got a couple of Gig Up from his second channel videos. I'm just kind of relaxing with it at the moment, so you're going to get like the plan is 2 videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday for now. Until I decide. But and there's also the 4-star bento videos checking out the Dragon Ball Z live action movies. There's 2 of those that I didn't check out. You guys were asking for that, so eventually it's all coming. I'm just trying to relax. I'm running a half marathon this Sunday, so wish me luck on that as well. And yeah, thanks for watching.